Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to try to stay on mute when Mark's talking and vice versa, because we got some feedback on my end.
Okay. And Mark, if you can maybe stop sharing it now, and then when we get to your item.
Okay, I'm trying to, yeah, I'm having trouble right here. I can't find the stop share button.
I think if you go to that same green button at the bottom of your screen, I think if you hit it again, it's supposed to stop sharing. I think.
If you have two screens, like for me, it shows up on my other screen. So you might want to look over on your other screen.
Your other teams. I didn't get this to full screen. I don't know. Brad, help. Yeah, where is your, you gotta, where's your full screen? Where do you stop sharing? You gotta stop sharing here. You need to.
I just muted you just in case you get super frustrated. Okay. Ashley, I see that looks like we're ready to go, but I'm waiting on a couple more.
Yep, I'm ready on this end.
Okay. Well, why don't just get going? I'm sure there'll be more people trickling in. So good afternoon. I'm going to call the Public Works Committee to order. And let's see. First things first, if Ashley, you could share information on how to join and participate. Thank you. And we continue to meet virtually, but you can find information on how to join by going to the city's website under public meetings, and you can find information on how to join and what's on our agenda. You can always call City Council and leave a voicemail calling 406-552-6012. And you can always provide comments to by emailing council@ci.missoula.mt.us. And these meetings are recorded so you can view them at your convenience. And Ashley, if we could do a quick roll call for attendance, please.
Anderson, Becerra,
Present.
Carlino,
Present.
Contos,
Here.
Hess,
Present.
Jones,
Present.
Jordan, Nugent, Savage, Cheryl,
Present.
Vasika,
Present.
West. Thank you.
Thanks, Ashley. Next, we have minutes to approve from our meeting on March 30th. Are there any changes to the minutes? Okay, seeing none, those will be approved.
And Merita, Jennifer Savage's link didn't work, so she's in the meeting as an attendee, FYI.
Oh, Ashley, if we could promote her, that would be great. Okay. I am going to do a quick look at to see if we have any public in attendance to provide public comment on items not on the agenda. And I see one caller ending in 977. Do let us know if you have public comment, or is that Jennifer Savage? Okay. Please, yeah, looks like it was. Okay, so we will move to our first item on the agenda, and that is a vacation of public utility easement adjacent to South 2nd Street West, and Mark Todorovich is here to present. So go ahead, Mark, and start sharing your screen if you want, or you're ready.
All right, thank you. I'll share my screen.
There it is.
Okay.
Great.
All right. Good afternoon. Mark Todorovich, Construction Project Coordinator, Public Works and Mobility, Surface Transportation Engineering. This is consideration for a public utility easement vacation adjacent to South 2nd Street West. This public utility easement vacation is located adjacent to the cul-de-sac at South 2nd Street West, east of Oak Street, and adjacent to the Bitterroot Branch Trail. This exhibit shows the public utility easement vacation area. To give you some background, in 1976, the city approved a resolution closing and vacating a portion of South 2nd Street West and retained a public utility easement over and across the street per Missoula Resolution number 3521. WGM Group is representing the Missoula Redevelopment Agency and the owners of Knowles Addition number 3, Block 85, lots 1, 2, and 3, and COS 6685 Tract A, as shown in Exhibit A. The owners, Sherpa Properties LLC and Bricks and Spurs LLC in Scariano, are requesting that the city vacate the two public utility easements that are 40 feet wide. The reason this request is that the north property owner has preliminary plans which include a new building inside the public utility easement. City engineering staff have reviewed this request after consulting with city utilities, parks and recreation, and MRA. City engineering is now recommending that the city vacate the two 40-foot easements and retain a single 20-foot wide public utility easement and public access easement centered on the existing sewer main. This 20-foot wide PUE PAE has already been signed and recorded. The 20-foot wide PAE will also provide bike and pedestrian neighborhood access for a future trail that will tie into the Bitterroot Branch Trail. Northwestern Energy has an aerial power line in the easement. Northwestern Energy wants to maintain the ability to perform maintenance on the existing aerial power line. The two 40-foot public utility easements have no private utilities in them. WGM Group notified all utility contacts for release of easements. The utility contacts are Northwestern Energy, Blackfoot Communications, CenturyLink, Missoula Electric Cooperative, and Spectrum. All of these utility contacts signed a release of easement document. The release of easement document releases and relinquishes any claim to the public utility easement. This site photo is at the end of South 2nd Street West, cul-de-sac looking east. This aerial map shows a vacated public utility easement in orange and maintained public utility easement and public access easement in green. This release for construction plan shows the new cul-de-sac and the new bicycle and pedestrian trail. I ask that you support this recommended motion, and I'll be happy to take any questions you might have.
Thank you, Mark. Are there any questions from committee members? I'm not seeing any. Would anyone, Gwen?
I do not have any questions, but I'm happy to make the motion.
Great, thank you. I am going to do a quick check to see if we have any public in attendance. And I don't see any. Ashley, would you mind renaming Jennifer Savage is under Jordan Hess using his link? Please. Okay, we have no comments, public comment on this motion. Thank you, Mark. And we are ready to take a roll call vote, please.
Becerra,
Yes.
Carlino,
Yes.
Contos,
Yes.
Hess,
Yes.
Jones,
Yes.
Jordan,
Yes.
Savage,
Yes.
Cheryl,
Yes.
Vasika.
Yes.
Okay, that is 9 yeses and 0 nos.
West is here too. Yes.
Oh, okay, thank you. 10 yeses.
Great. Thanks, Ashley. And that motion passes and it will be on our consent agenda. Thank you, Mark.
Thank you.
Great. Okay, and we will now move to our second item on the agenda, and that is an informational presentation about our water utility. And Logan is here to present.
Thanks, Mirta. I'll share my screen if I can. Okay, I always get a little confused here. So are you seeing the water utility overview screen?
Yes.
Okay, great. Oh, I have the wrong date on here. Sorry, I moved. I'm Logan McInnes, Deputy Director of Public Works for Utilities. Just kind of here to give an informational overview of the water utility. So this is kind of a screen that came out of our facilities plan from a few years ago. And it kind of just gives an overview of the facilities. And I guess just from the start, I'd encourage you to ask any questions you have along the way. I wasn't sure what all you guys were interested in hearing about today. So I'm focused primarily on capital spending and that sort of thing, but I did want to give an overview of the system. So feel free to ask any questions along the way. So as the screen shows, we have 40 groundwater wells. That's probably probably more like 42 now. We've taken on the Phantom Hills system that has a couple of wells also. So those numbers haven't been updated because this was from our facilities plan. So we have, as it says, 101 million gallons per day of water rights at groundwater locations. So that's an incredible amount of water, as you can probably imagine. I think the most we've ever pumped in a day is about 52 million gallons per day. And that's been a while. Our summer peaks are usually more like 45 million gallons per day in recent years. So we can pump 74 million gallons per day from wells. We have a total of 25 water storage facilities. These are these little blue cylinders that you kind of see in the maps. You know, the way our topography is, we have to have tanks at various elevations throughout town to provide the water, adequate water pressure that's not too high or not too low for every customer. So we have 24 different storage tanks, total of about 10.4 million gallons of storage. Have 46 different pressure zones, which is sort of unheard of. It's just topographically, that's kind of the way the system ended up. I remember hearing like the city of Dallas has 3 pressure zones. We have 46, but they're pretty flat. So to accomplish that, either you need a storage tank at every zone or you need a pressure reducing station. So we have 36 different pressure reducing stations in the system, and then 22 booster stations. So, all the water is pumped. I think these little yellow things are where the wells are. I mean, they're scattered all throughout the valley. The largest wells are right along the river. Those are 3,000 to 7,000 gallon a minute wells. And then as the further you get away from the river, the wells tend to be smaller. Most of our wells are 1,000 gallons a minute. But so we pump out of the valley floor, but then we pump up to a tank, and then you got to boost it further up the hill, I guess, to these other tanks. So that's why we have 22 different booster stations. I had a total of 331 miles of water mains. That's now about 340 miles. 24,000 service connections and about 1,450 fire hydrants. And we serve about 73,000 people. That's probably certainly higher now. This was 4 or 5 years ago. In terms of water that we use, metered water use, is compared to other cities in the region, we're relatively low. We use about 140 gallons per capita per day for metered water use. Certainly higher than Bozeman. Bozeman's pretty water limited, so they've done a fair amount of conservation to try to get people to use less water. I'll move on here unless there's any questions. Just want to talk a little bit about the staff that we have at Water. Jerry Ellis is our superintendent for water operations. Brenda Mays is our senior accountant. And under Jerry, we have 4 basic work groups. We have a distribution group under Mike Hanahan. They're the folks that do taps, and they do the work on the water mains primarily. So if we have a leak, they're the ones out fixing it in the middle of the night, and the taps. Craig Yance is our service supervisor. So this would be the work that happens in people's homes, basically installing meters is most of what they do. They do a lot of service orders too. If people call up and they have low pressure or their water tastes bad or they're just lonely and they want to talk, then these are the folks that we end up out in people's houses. Jerry Schindler is our production supervisor. So the production department, they run the wells, the tanks, the booster stations, the pressure reducing valves, all the sort of mechanical equipment in the system. And then finally, Denise Tribble is our water facilities supervisor. Take care of things here at the 1345 West Broadway and overseeing maintenance on all of our facilities. Give you an overview of sort of the maintenance work that we do in a typical year. So in 2021, we inspected and flowed 3,225 hydrants. So every year we look at the hydrants in the fall and again in the spring. So that we spend a lot of work, a lot of time maintaining those. We like to exercise our valves every 5 years or so. So this year we turned about 1,900 valves. We want to make sure that they work. We want to make sure we know where they're at, that they're not full of debris, because if there's a water main break or that sort of thing, then we want to know that we can get on the valve and get it to work. I see that Heidi has a question. I'm happy to take it.
Sorry, I just had a question about what's meant by valves. Are those the valves that go between a delivery line or a main to a house, or are they valves just within the water system?
Good question. So both. So every service line has what's called a corporation stop at the main, which is a buried valve. You can't access it from the ground, but so that's one way of isolating a service. And then every service line also has a curb valve out behind the curb. And that's how you can shut off the water to a service. The valves I'm talking about are mainline valves. So they every 500 feet or so, or every time you have a T or a branch, usually you have valves so you can isolate each part of each main from other mains. That way, if you have an outage, that you can shut a couple valves and limit it so that you're not putting a lot of customers out of water at any one time. So we performed 86 taps last year. A lot of the taps on main extensions get done by contractors, but we perform all the taps on existing mains. Our group performed over 5,000 locates last year on water mains. Completed over 2,800 service orders for like the things I was talking about earlier, water quality or meter installs or other issues that customers may be having. As you probably are aware, we're in the process of replacing all the meters in our system. Last year we did about 1,900, which is certainly less than we had hoped for. There's a real problem with computer chips and delivery of the radio devices on our meters. But we're continuing to make progress on the meter replacements. Then we do a lot of sampling. Every week we do bacterial sampling on every one of our 37 active wells. The DEQ also requires us to do distribution samples at 70 locations every month to make sure that we don't have bacterial contamination out in our system. In addition to that, we every year obtain hundreds of additional samples as required by DEQ, things like nitrates, metals, volatile organic compounds, etc. We have folks that visit all 76 of our production facilities biweekly to kind of take a look at things, make sure we have adequate chlorine, make sure there's not damage, graffiti things. So we spend a lot of time keeping an eye on all these critical facilities. We have SCADA, which is our telemetry system at 84 sites. So that takes a fair amount of work to keep the towers up, the radios talking to each other. And then we have a full-time backflow specialist that oversees testing of 2,800 backflow devices. Those would be customer owned, but we require that they be tested annually. So it takes a fair amount of work just overseeing that program. Today I want to talk mostly about what our capital needs are. So as I mentioned, we have about 340 miles of water mains in the system. Our water facilities plan recommended that we target about 1% replacement of water mains per year, which is 3.4 miles per year that we should be trying to replace. That basically assumes a water main can last 100 years, which is we shouldn't be assuming they're going to last any longer than that, but unfortunately we have been. We've been for a number of years have been replacing maybe 0.3% a year, so it's not good enough. They're not going to last 300 years, so we need to get more aggressive about replacing water mains. Unfortunately, as you're not surprised to hear, we've been kind of clobbered by inflation in the last year or so. So now we recently opened bids on 5 projects, and the average cost to replace a mile of water main is now $2.4 million. So just to do our 1% a year means just spending on mains, we should be targeting over $8.2 million a year. And that doesn't talk about all the other capital that we have, tanks and wells and pumps and various things that also need to be replaced and upsized periodically. Oops, sorry. Give you some idea of what our pipes look like age-wise. So the oldest pipes are on the right side. So we have 9 miles of pipe that are over 100 years old, and another 5 that are over 90 years old, and another 18 that are over 80 years old. So we've got a real backlog. We've got some catching up to do. Here's the breakdown by materials. So for probably the last 15 or 20 years, all we've put in is ductile iron. That's kind of our standard pipe material. Before that, for 15 or 20 years, we put a lot of PVC in. Had some issues on tapping and things that led us to go to ductile iron as our preferred pipe material. But there's a lot of other things in the system. We've got 10 miles of asbestos concrete pipe. We've got 40 miles of cast iron pipe that tends to be 60 to 80 years old. Probably the two types of pipe that we're really targeting for replacement out here on the right, steel invasion pipe, almost 4 miles. That's very thin walled pipe that was built in World War II to pipe water and gas onto beachheads. There was surplus pipe after World War II. Power company got a great deal on it, put it in, but it's been a pain ever since. It's so thin, it corrodes pretty badly. You get a lot of pinhole leaks on it. And then the other type of pipe we're targeting is calamine, which is, we have 9 miles of that. It's tends to be thicker wall. It's fairly beefy pipe, but it's old. That's the 100-year-old pipe. So those are the pipes that we're really targeting. Real quick, just to give you an idea of how big our pipes are. Most of our pipes are 6-inch at 130 miles. Our standard anymore, we don't put anything smaller than 8-inch. So we've got quite a bit of 8-inch pipe, 96 miles. And then we put a fair amount of 10 and 12-inch pipe in. And then, some of these larger sizes, we don't put a whole lot in, but there is a fair amount in the system for transmission mains.
Logan, I see,
sorry.
I see Kristen Jordan with a question.
Thank you. I just want to ask really quickly, do we have any lead pipes anywhere?
That's a very good question. No, but I should be a little more specific. Some of the, before they invented rubber gaskets I think in the 1930s, some of the pipes were jointed with lead. So calamine pipe is not lead pipe, but there's a bit of lead exposed in the pipe at every joint. So I can't say there's not lead in our system, but we do test our system, and the lead levels in the water are either non-detect or incredibly low. I don't remember off the top of my head. And that doesn't mean customers can't get lead in their water, because some customers do have a small amount of lead in their water, because up until 1986, we were still allowing people to make, use lead solder, use lead in brass and things. So lead certainly can be a problem. We test, I forget how many customer services every year. The lead and copper rule says that you're okay as long as 90% of your samples are below 15 parts per billion. And I think 90% of our samples are below 2 parts per billion. So we're well within compliance of lead and copper rule, but that doesn't mean there's not some customers with lead. I mean, I think we might maybe have levels that are 6 or 7 in a couple of our samples. And I'm sure you're all aware of the school sampling that's gone on. And it's certainly concerning. The schools are taking anything offline that's 5 parts per billion or over. And we've reached out to them. We're aware of some funding sources for lead, but I guess more to come there. But hopefully I've answered your question. There is no lead pipe. I'll talk a little bit later about the composition of the service lines. So I will address that in a little bit more detail later. Jennifer, I see you have a question. I'm not hear you. Could you put it in a chat or something maybe?
I don't think we have chat.
Oh, okay.
I'll make a note, Jennifer, that you have a question, and then we'll get back to you, okay?
Sounds good.
Okay.
Okay. I'll move on here.
I
see John's got a question for you.
Yeah.
Yeah. How many employees did you say you had at the beginning?
32.
Great, thanks.
Yep. Okay, I will move on here. This is to sort of address capital spending historically and currently and what we project into the future. So as you're probably all aware, in 2017, the city took over the water system from Mountain Water. So Mountain Water was spending around $4 million a year. I think as things went into the trial, spending dropped off pretty significantly. City took over in 2017, kind of a middle of the construction season anyways. It was beginning of the fiscal year, but it was pretty difficult to spend much in 2017. Ramped up in 2018 and 2019 to a little over $6 million. Unfortunately, 2020 and 2021 became a challenge to spend capital. We had more approved by the council, but it got really difficult to do projects with COVID. And then the other complication that cropped up is, we're relying on state revolving fund loans at this point to finance our spending. And it's taken us about a year or more to get those loans in place. I don't think, we didn't really have experience with that program. I don't think any of us realized how time consuming that process was going to be. But, we've now closed on, I think just the other day, on a $12 million loan. We've got another $3 million loan for tanks. So, it's a little frustrating that our spending kind of dipped, but those are kind of our reasons. And I think we're really hitting the ground running pretty fast here in 2022. So we're projecting to spend $12 million. I'd say we've got projects queued up. They probably won't all get done by the end of 2022, but we're going to be spending very aggressively over the next foreseeable future, honestly. So this is kind of what things look like. A little over 12 million this year, a little over 8 million in 23, over 12 million again in 24. So it just kind of depends on, some years we have big projects projected and some years not. So the brighter green is what we're spending on mains. So I think of what I mentioned to you earlier, that we probably need to be about 8.2 million a year to get that target. And so this graph doesn't show us getting there. I mean, we're close this year, but we definitely need to do more. So, we're working on it. At this point, we've more or less tapped out the available contractor resource. We just opened one more bid yesterday and got a pretty good bid. But the available contractors in town are pretty well exhausted at this point in terms of ability to bid on things. So that's sort of one of the practical limitations to getting capital deployed here. Moving on. So this is just to give you an idea what we've been replacing per year. FY17, not much, a mile in 18, about 2.5 in 2019, about a mile in 20, a little over a half mile in 21. Now we're projecting a little over 3 miles in 22. So not at our goal, but we're getting fairly close to that point. Just quickly talk about the sources of funds that we're projecting to use. So the light blue color are development funds. So we've had a development fund or development fees in place for about a year. And so those funds can be used for things that expand capacity in the system, and new tanks and things like that. We can't use those to fund water main replacements, unfortunately. The darker blue is just using cash from the utility to fund a portion of our capital. The dark green is the SRF and debt or other sources of debt. So you can see that's largely how we're going to be funding our capital moving forward. And then next year, this brighter green color is we're planning to spend 3.4 million in ARPA minimum allocation funds. So I think we've talked about this in other venues. the city's entitled to $10.3 million in ARPA minimum allocation grants for water, wastewater, and stormwater. So stormwater, I forget, we committed 400,000 or something to a stormwater project. We're committing 3.4 to these water projects. We still have about $6 million in minimum allocation that we need to have a plan by the end of the year. And we're waiting. We've made some other grant applications for ARPA competitive grants, and we're just kind of waiting to see how those turn out. We should know by, I think, April 20th, what other grants that we can receive, and then we'll make decisions about where to spend the rest of that ARPA minimum allocation.
Logan, I wanted to see if Jennifer can give it another go at asking her question before we go too far away from what she wanted to ask.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. Really apologize to the entire committee. I have done nothing. I don't know what is going on with my situation over here for the whole committee meeting today. My only question was just for those older lines, the older pipes, are they concentrated in a few areas, or are they kind of all over the city?
Oh, they're mostly down, in the main valley floor, just the downtown area. It's mostly old pipe. I could probably put up a map. We have GIS layers that call them kind of priority mains, So we try to look at things as, say, Brian Hensel looks at streets he wants to do, we overlay. And so we certainly want to make sure we're not building new streets over really old pipes. So, we do have some GIS layers that help identify those. But yeah, for the most part, just the downtown area and just anything in the valley floor is often pretty old.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, this slide just talks about the main capital projects we're doing this year. So we're building 2 new water tanks on Lincoln Hills. So the upper and lower Lincoln Hills. I'll put up a map in a moment to kind of show you where these projects all are. We're also building a new tank up in the Prospect subdivision. I think it's Pinnacle Place. We have a tank there, but it's not big enough, so we're building a second one next to it. We're replacing $1.2 million in water meters this year. So the Mull and Build grant, part of the local funding for that project is water and wastewater are funding the water and sewer utilities. Next Monday, we have a public hearing. Those are going to be repaid by developers if you all approve of that concept. So right now we're funding them out of water, but we would like the developers to refund that cost so that we can use that money for other system needs. And then this year we've got these 5 water mains that we've bid out. One of them is already under construction, Cooley Stoddard. The Cooper Alley is about the leakiest piece of main in our whole system. It's just north of our water building here. That's going to be starting in a few weeks. Beckwith, we're going to be boring under Stevens and kind of replacing the main in Beckwith by the St. Joe's School after school gets out, and then Shakespeare, and then Broadway and May. So let's see, I was just going to put up a map, but I can't remember how to minimize this screen. Well, I'll tell you what, I'll get to the map in a little bit. I'll just keep going through a few more slides here. Leakage is a problem, and I'm sure you're all aware of that. I just wanted to give you a little bit of information. This is an example leak. It's on a 57-year-old steel main. So that, this isn't a main that we're anywhere near targeting for replacement, but it's got a leak on it. This particular leak we found because it's in an area that it's in a pressure reducing valve area. So we know exactly how much water goes into this area. And we're able to kind of see in the middle of the night, the system's using too much water. So we knew there was leakage on this particular system. And so we have a new correlator, which is a sounding device that was able to pinpoint the location of this. And we were able to fix it. So like I said, about 90 gallons a minute. We repair somewhere between 25 and 35 main leaks per year. service lines are a really big problem that we haven't really wrapped our minds around how to solve. I am totally convinced that probably half or more of our leakage is on service lines. The customer owns a service line from the main to the house. We've probably, I've looked, we've done just in the last 15 months, we've done about 260 customer leak investigations. So that gives you some idea. And those are the ones that the customers call us about. So we know there's gobs of customers that aren't calling us to ask if they have a leak. We believe there's about 16,000 galvanized service lines in service in the system. So at an average of about $7,500 a piece, that's $120 million of community funds to replace those galvanized services. It's just kind of a monumental problem. The meter is in the old part of town, the meter's in the house. So the customer has no real incentive to fix their service line unless they don't have enough pressure, or it's causing so much noise on their line that they can't sleep at night. Otherwise, the customer is not going to fix the leaky service. There's no easy answers to this sort of funding problem, but we are working on a variety of solutions to the problem. Then we talked a little bit about lead and copper. So the lead and copper rule just got revised last year. It's requiring us to perform a service line inventory by 2024. Obviously there, the point is to identify any lead service lines. I have some information I'll get to in a minute on that. Here's kind of this is not an atypical situation. So here's a picture of a leak. We fixed this in February, even though it was on a customer's line. We're trying out this new correlator that we bought, and it's turned out to be quite accurate. But a customer called and said that there was noise on their line. Well, they didn't say there's not enough water pressure. Somehow this 4-inch long gash in their service line, there was enough water getting by it to maintain pressure in their line. This line is from 1936, so it just kind of gives you an idea. This particular one's copper, but we don't have a lot of copper services. So here's some information. We have 8,000 known galvanized services, about 8 or more than 8,000 plastic services, and then about 8,000 that are listed as unknown. So our records are pretty incomplete. The reality is most, if not all, of these unknown services are galvanized. There's none that are listed as lead. In the 15 years I've been here, I've heard of a handful, like maybe 5 lead goosenecks. So a gooseneck is the short piece of pipe where the service line connects to the main. A lot of times they're at different elevations. So they would run the service line out from the house, and then to get it to the right elevation for the tap, they would sort of field fabricate a chunk of lead because it was more flexible. But like I said, those are incredibly rare. I've only been aware of a few of those. Here, give you some idea of the age of our service lines. I mean, a lot of them are unknown. These would be mostly old if they're, when we weren't keeping the best records, but certainly, there's at least 1,000 that date back to 1930 and another 1,500 back to 1940. So there's a lot of old services in town. I just quick want to kind of address sustainability efforts for the water utility. Number one is certainly has to be reducing system leakage. It's a very hard needle to move, but we are working hard at it. I think one of the most promising things we can do is we're looking at drilling a production well at the airport. So we have wells pumping, I think 8,000 or 9,000 gallons a minute, 24/7, 365. And so we've hoped to be able to produce about maybe 3,000 gallons a minute at the airport. And the reason that makes sense is part of the airport is served by Missoula Electric Co-op, and they've got a 98 or 99% carbon-free electric portfolio. So if we can take that much pumping off a Northwest Energy system where it's, I think, 68% green, then we are significantly reducing our greenhouse gas emissions just by changing power sources. Another thing we're working on, we acquired property on Mullen Road, the Klaus property, which is right by the Poplar Farm. And our goal there is to drill a production well and convert a portion of the Poplar Farm to solar. So that's something we're working on. Right now, we're working with McKinstry on a pump energy efficiency study on a sort of a select group of pumps. We did a system-wide study 9 years ago now. So we're kind of focusing in on the ones that were sort of the highest potential payback or the fastest potential payback. So there's, I think, 13 pumps. We're going to go out and measure the power draw and have them recommend some replacements. And then kind of the last bullet, we're working on with a company called Utilis that they do satellite imagery leak detection. So they can actually detect underground chlorinated water from satellite imagery. And it sounds like black magic, but we've consulted a number of references that speak highly of them. So it's something that we want to try. So anyways, those are some of the things we're doing around sustainability.
Logan, it looks like Jordan has a question.
Okay.
Yeah, thanks, Logan. I have a question on the service line section. There's, I guess several years back, the city partnered with, it was the National League of Cities that was working with a private insurance provider to offer a service line warranty. Can you talk a little bit about that and if we have any data on utilization or whether or not that's been a success?
Sure. Yep. So yeah, that's something that we started on not long after the city took over. It took quite a while to get the system propped up, to do all the due diligence. You know, it's been available now for a couple of years. I actually just a week or so ago emailed the contact there and I've asked them for this in the past to just get an idea of how many customers we have, how many claims have been processed. I didn't get a response from them, but the last data I had, we had about 850 customers that were utilizing that service. And I'm, you know, before we authorized their last mail campaign, we did a customer survey. So we got an address list for all the claims that they had processed, and we contacted each of those customers to see what their experience was. You know, there's been a few bumps in the road where people call in and they don't get great service, but always, if those come to me, I call our point of contact. They've always been taken care of. So, you know, I'd say we continue to be satisfied. You know, I don't think that program is going to result in hundreds of service lines being repaired or replaced. You know, it's fairly low cost. It's like $6.25 a month, something like that for the warranty. But it's only going to cover if you have a leak that's surfacing or creating a low water pressure. Just because you have some noise on your line, they're not going to just show up and replace your service line. So it is good peace of mind for people to have. I think it's a good system. I'm glad it's there. It'll cover up to $8,400 or $8,500 per claim. And you know, if they fix one leak and it ends up leaking again tomorrow, they got to come back and that's a separate claim and they got to fix that too. So the system is resulting in some service lines getting replaced. I know I've kind of worked with Miss Jones on one on Hilda and one got replaced by service line warranties. And I think they may be in the process of replacing another one. So it's having some net positive, but I don't think it's going to be a game changer in terms of hundreds of service lines being replaced.
Thanks. And maybe a follow-up, if I may.
Yep.
Go ahead.
I guess it's not on the warranty program so much, but on service lines, do we have a strategy on, you know, what we would recommend a homeowner do just to get information about their service line? Like, you know, can someone call and get, for example, when their line was replaced or what, or any information that would help them? I mean, that's replacing a service line would be a huge unbudgeted expense for a lot of people. So making a decision about whether or not to sign up for that warranty or just you know, doing some due diligence, what should someone do in that case?
Yeah, a lot of them will call in. You know, if we have records, we're certainly going to share them. They're available in our publicly available map, and I think I can show you here in a minute how to find those. So if there's a ditch card for service, which, most of them we have information about. Any customer could get that off our website. Certainly if they call, we can give them, I guess we have to be a little careful about recommending particular contractors. We can, we give them a list of all the licensed and bonded contractors in town, but that list is incredibly long. So it would be nice if we could have a shorter list to say, here's the folks that we see do that. So anyways, I think we try to be a resource, but you're right. It is a daunting task for folks that don't know how to call a contractor, or contractors are so busy, they don't necessarily, they're not going to get a lot of response from folks. So, we've had to be creative. There's times when somebody's got a leak in the street and it's in January and it's causing a skating rink, and you folks authorize us the ability in an emergency basis to go make a repair and bill the customer for it, but we have to give them 21 days notice. It's not a ideal system, but I guess we find ways to help the customer. It's certainly, we're motivated to do it. We do these leak investigations. We will send a letter if we know that there's a leak, and we'll tell them that they need to deal with it. But I can't say that we really follow up. We don't, unless the leak is causing damage, we don't shut somebody's water off because they're not getting a leak repaired. So it's just a big, challenging task, I guess. And it's, you're right, most customers don't have $7,500 laying around to take on this problem. So we had kind of hoped the ARPA new rules were going to maybe be a source of funds. It's not really clear that, like, galvanized pipes technically have a little bit of lead in them, but we've been monitoring that as closely as we can. And it sounds to me like the funding that's available through ARPA for lead lines is probably not going to be, that we're not going to be eligible for that funding. We're continuing to monitor it, but it doesn't look very promising to me as a potential source of funds. So I'm rambling, not really answering your question, but that's, I guess.
No, that's helpful. I appreciate it.
And I'll show you on a map here in a sec. Where
So we have Sandra and Kristen with questions too.
Okay. Sandra, you want to go?
Oh, okay, I wasn't sure if that was me being called on. So I really like this presentation. I was wondering if we can get a copy of it. And then also, I'm sorry if I missed it, but I thought that we didn't have chlorine in our water. And then on the second to last slide, there was mention of it. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yes, we do chlorinate our water.
Oh, okay. Why do we do that?
It's the best practice. I mean, all decently sized water systems of any sort chlorinate. We didn't start chlorinating until like 1990. There was a sewage backup, and it contaminated a well, and I don't remember all the details, but we pretty much had to chlorinate from that point forward.
Okay, and then but we don't put fluoride in our.
That's correct. We do not.
Okay.
Fluoridate, but we do chlorinate. And,
Okay.
and our levels are pretty low because we're groundwater. There's not a lot of chlorine demand. We dose somewhere between 0.4 and 0.5 parts per million. So it's relatively low. I mean, you can certainly taste it. If people complain about it, we usually recommend if you put your water in a pitcher in the fridge, by the next morning it'll be nice and cold and you won't be able to taste chlorine. So it's pretty easy to get rid of the chlorine taste.
Okay, thank you.
Welcome.
I thought I saw Kristen Jordan's hand up, but now I don't see her. Maybe she left. Gwen, did you have your hand up?
No, I just wanted to clarify the chlorine versus fluoride, but I think we got there.
Okay. And I see that Kristen has rejoined. Do you have a question?
I do. Sorry about that. I got a guy replacing my electric meter and I forgot I still needed the internet. Anyway, do we still have, yeah, okay, Logan. The question I had, Logan, is I'm just wondering how many folks have taken advantage of the city-sponsored insurance plan for their pipes in their yard? Have you had a good response to that?
I don't know those numbers. I know people have used it. I don't think it's been very widely used.
Yeah, I did it.
Good.
Sandra.
Yeah, sorry, just really quick, in case public is watching, that's great that the city does have a insurance plan for their service line, but a lot of your homeowners insurance policies, they have that endorsement on there as well, so you can ask your insurance agent about that. So just wanted to let the public know.
That's a good point. Thank you for that reminder.
Okay. Any other questions for Logan?
Real quick, I'll just show you, in case anybody wants information about the projects, I just thought I'd route you to our website. So under the Public Works Department projects, there's this infrastructure. So this is just projects we're doing in 2022 in the department. And then if just to look at water, if I click on this water button, that'll kind of show you where the water mains that we're replacing. So I think I talked about the Cooper Alley project right here. This is the Shakespeare project. This is the Cooley Stoddard project up here. Now we're doing this project at Broadway, May Street. And then we got the project down here on Beckwith. And then we kind of decided, we heard there was some contractor availability. So we're actually just open bids on a project on 3rd Street. And I don't know the exact extent. It's not showing up on this map yet. It's between Orange and Myrtle, I think. So anyways, that one's not been updated. And then, and then I guess we have the tank projects too. I was just going to kind of show you those. So upper and lower Lincoln Hills tanks. I don't know how to turn on that photograph on this site. So anyways, and then the upper Prospect tank sits up here at the end of Pinnacle Place. And then just quick, I was going to show you if a customer wanted to access their water sewer service connection information. This is a publicly available website. And I guess I don't have a simple URL to provide. If anybody wants it, I'm sure that the GIS folks can provide it. But any parcel you click on, it'll.
Logan, it's just MissoulaMaps.com.
Okay, thanks, Andy.
Yeah, there's several different maps that you can access.
Thank you. So yeah, if you just click on a parcel there, here it has a sanitary sewer record. Doesn't have a water connection, but a lot of them will have a water connection record too. So there is, and the water ditch cards, we're still in the process of. They've all been scanned, but it takes time to link them to a parcel, so it's something that we're continuing to work on. Anyways, I'm kind of digressing, but are there any other questions or things that you hoped I would address today that I didn't?
Stacy.
Thanks so much for the presentation. Super helpful information and really a great overview of all that you all are very busy doing. And I may have missed the slide at the very beginning because I know you talked about the transition from being a privately owned company to a municipally held company and some of the, financing around that and the financing changes, and you talked about spending, and you can really see a huge difference in the screen. And I just can't help but take the opportunity to point out that is all based on spending still with rates that were approved prior to this municipal government or the city of Missoula owning our own water system. So you can really see the direct benefit to the citizens of Missoula and the water rate payers in terms of putting money back into the overall system, which is just a better way to do things. And that, I don't know if you want to say a quick couple sentences about, the difference between the enterprise fund and the general fund and how that this, increase in infrastructure has no tie to folks' taxes, and it's all based on the water rates.
Yeah, that is true. All of our everything we spend is generated internally within the water department. So certainly no tax dollars that we make here, or that we spend here. Enterprise funds have to be kept separate from other city funds. So, the money that we charge our water customers for gets plowed back into improvements in the water system. You folks did authorize a 3% rate increase at the beginning of the year, and a 5% in 23 and a 5% in 24. So, those are trying to keep up with just the inflation and so we can pay our bills. They weren't really about expanding capital, right? Like it's mostly just about trying to keep up with the costs of running the utility. But yeah, we're super excited to move forward and start replacing a bunch of mains. I mean, it's been a little frustrating just with kind of what I talked about earlier with COVID and kind of the delays in getting our SRF financing, but we're really excited to have contractors on the ground getting work done here. So, and we appreciate all the support that we've received over the years from the council. It's been great. We feel very supported and we appreciate that.
Thank you, Logan. Let me do a quick check to see if anyone from the public, we don't have anyone in attendance. Any last questions for Logan? Okay. Thank you.
I don't know. I know somebody asked about the PowerPoint, and I'll just talk to Ashley and Katie and figure out what the best way to share that with you folks would be, if it can be linked to this Public Works Committee agenda now or whatever. I'll follow up on that.
Yeah, or maybe on the website, or maybe engage Missoula just to make it really broad. And there's some really good little nuggets of information that the public might find helpful and useful.
Okay.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Appreciate everything you guys do. Every day we drink our water and, don't really realize what goes into making it come out of the faucet nice and clean and up to standards. So I appreciate it.
Well, thank you. I think we all enjoy providing that service to the community. So.
Okay. Well, I don't see any other questions, and that was our last item on the agenda. So with that, we will be adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Bye.